Welcome back. You're listening to Vibrant Living with Vayu Yoga. I'm Wendy Hassenpflug.
And I'm Shannon Levy-heath.
On your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. Today we're talking about consistency, and I'd like to start the segment with a quote by Mr. Tony Robbins. His quote says, "It's not what we do once in a while that shapes our lives. It's what we do consistently." And it truly is important that, it's sometimes doing things once in a while is great, but if you really want an outcome from it, you really got to be consistent. So I think that speaks loudly in every aspect of our life, from physical activity to relationships to our job to the quality of products or service. You are going to return to somewhere where you know that they're going to be consistent each time. So
Right.
Everything in life comes down to that, truly. Here's something to think about when, we've talked today, we spoke in the first two segments with Crystal Lacy-Edwards about Pilates and how consistency impacts or doesn't impact. The lack of consistency can impact you as well in both your goals, your practice, and your life. And what I'd like to kind of touch on is, the amount of time that it took for you to be where you're at right now is most likely the amount of time that it's going to take for you to get yourself turned around and be where you want to be.
That's a pretty powerful statement.
Yeah, and in some instances, we're talking like 10, 20, 30 years that we are stuck in certain patterns of our life, doing things consistently, but in the wrong direction, right? So something to think about is that, even though we talked about how you're going to feel the difference in Pilates in 10 days and the 20 days and the 30 days that we talked about earlier, that still is just getting you step by step. It's not going to get you to where you really want to be that quickly.
Yeah. Well, and I'm thinking about, too, if you've got a 30-year pattern of consistency in the wrong direction, hopefully it's not going to take you an entire 30 to turn it around. That's a bit daunting. So maybe we need to take the one step at a time approach. And in that regard, those small steps do lead to a greater outcome.
But I think that really brings a good topic up to mind too, because so often we think about where we really want to be. So, I've got this idea, I'm going to start this new habit of yoga and or Pilates 3 times a week, 4 times a week. And this is something new in my life. I've never done this before. And I want to weigh $125. I want, 25% body fat. I want to be strong enough to do 10 push-ups. I want, and I want to, in my head, I'm thinking, I want to be the person I was when I was 20, perhaps. And let's say I'm, 45 or 50, and so we have somewhat unrealistic expectations too.
And that can be dangerous.
Absolutely.
Because it leads us into, once again, unhealthy patterns in our lives.
Right.
Mental, physical, emotional, spiritual.
Right. Which, it's not impossible to do some of the things that we did when we were that age, but we have to work our way to it, and we have to be realistic as to what is pushing ourselves outside our means too far. So we talked about Pilates for the first 2 segments. I'd like to move into consistency when it comes to yoga. And one of my favorite mentors that I've learned a lot through reading a lot of his articles and part of, excerpts and books from him is Eric Schiffman. And some of the things that he talks about, when he answers the question, why be consistent with yoga? Well, because yoga makes you feel good. It's relaxing, it's energizing, it's strengthening, and you feel better at the end of your session than before you began. And life runs just more smoothly when you maintain a consistent discipline than when you don't. So yoga enhances your experience of life. And I actually see that and feel that every single time, whether I'm teaching a yoga practice or I'm taking it. I am a different person than when I first walked in that door, for sure.
And a different person in the more positive direction. And
Right.
there are days when you feel, I just don't think I have it in me to go do that. And on those occasions when you can push yourself a little bit out of your comfort zone to bring yourself to the mat, I can almost guarantee you're going to walk away with a different perspective.
And it's those days I find that consistency steps into play, right? So on the days that it is challenging and other things are kind of getting in your way and distracting you, just making the commitment and being consistent to just get there because you're going to feel better afterwards. And, yoga really changes your perspective. You embrace a larger, more accurate conception of who you are and how life works. You start seeing things differently. And here's what's different about that. You see things with a little less distortion because you're not working from such a stressed state. It's brought you to a different level. And that level incorporates more peace of mind, more enthusiasm for life, and, an ever-growing, authentic sense of an inner well-being.
I feel that I have a greater clarity of focus of the simple things that I might not have noticed, and how each person, each thing, each event can look different each time I see it.
Right. That's the perspective
yes.
shift. Absolutely. Yes. And, for most people, practicing yoga 3 times a week is really ideal. So when people ask me, how many times a week should I do this? Well, 3 times a week is really ideal. But in reality, when yoga was created, and if you were to ask people that truly are yogis, that they're doing yoga every day of some sort, whether it be 15 minutes to an hour and 15 minutes, they're getting it in every day.
Even if it's pranayama or which is breath work for those of you who don't know that, meditation, or just a small asana practice, the poses. Just a few minutes is enough to cause a subtle shift.
And that's where the home practice comes into play. So if you can't afford to take, pay for a class every single day of the week, then you look at your budget and you decide, how much can I afford to, and how much do I need to take from somebody else? If you're new, the more you're going to take from somebody else, the more you're going to learn how to do things correctly. If you're, just taking from a DVD, you don't have feedback from somebody to know if you're doing it right or wrong. But if that's all you can do, then that's better than nothing at all, right? But definitely maintaining the progress is going to happen with that consistency that we've been talking about. So if you look at, let's say, flexibility, a consistent practice of stretching is more useful than an intense and less frequent session of stretching. So if you're just coming in once a week for yoga and you're getting your stretches in once a week, you're going to feel great the rest of that day, maybe into the next day, and then you're going back to your behavior patterns and your movement patterns that you're doing throughout the day, your mental and emotional patterns that are actually causing the tension and the tightness in the body to begin with. And then you're holding that in the body for all of that time until you stretch again. So this is why it's so important that you do start to develop consistency at least 3 times a week.
Yeah. I want to share something from my jazz class last Saturday. I had a student say, "What, you can leave out the yoga type stretches that you do." And she said, "Because they're killing me, And I said, "Well, and they wanted to know, well, why do you do the breath connection, and why do you do the yoga with the dance stretches?" And I said, "For balance, to balance the flexibility with the strength and connecting it all with the breath." But I thought that was really amusing, and I thought, well, if you're only doing this once a week, you are going to feel it later.
Right,
for sure.
Yeah, and Shannon teaches jazz at College of the Canyons here locally.
Yes.
And so, and that's a class that you are developing for Vayu Yoga. And we'll do a workshop here soon and then start with a series, Yoga for Dancers, because it is important. And it's a different way to approach flexibility.
Dancers are sort of all about the flexibility, but they forget that they need strength in the supporting muscles in order not to injure themselves.
Well, and not only that, but they need flexibility in the opposite muscles from what they're using in dance. So it's learning that as well. And some days we're going to feel stronger and more flexible than other days. And other days, those days that we don't feel that are going to feel like a struggle. But those are the days that it's most important to just take it easy but be consistent. So today we've been talking about consistency, both in our Pilates and our yoga practice. And in our last segment, we're going to share just a little bit more specifically about some exercises that you can do that are really pretty simple and can help really keep you consistent, working towards your optimal health. Remember that this weekend we are offering a free Pilates class at the Lululemon in Valencia on Sunday. Vayu Yoga is actually sponsoring that at 9:30 a.m. So join us this weekend on Sunday. And our studio is actually located at 8th and Main in Old Town Newhall. If you want some more information, you can find us on the web at vayuyoga.com. I'm Wendy Hassenpflug, and you're listening to Vibrant Living with Vayu Yoga on your hometown station, AM 1220. 1220 KHTS. Welcome back. You're listening to Vibrant Living with Vayu Yoga. I'm Wendy Hassenpflug.
And I'm Shannon Levy-heath.
On your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. Today we've been talking about consistency, both in your Pilates and yoga practice as well as in your life. I'd like to open this segment with a quote by Richard G. Scott. We become what we want to be by consistently being what we want to become each day. I had to read that a few times for it to really make sense, because it really is about being instead of doing. And it's also about projecting into, the future of, maybe not the future, but in what you really want to become, and allowing yourself to be that consistently. And so I like that quote.
This is a really important quote, and I think it merits repeating several times.
Yeah, it's almost
like a mantra. To really begin to take it into your, it is like a mantra.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Truly. Yeah. So here's the thing, I'm going to just kind of touch back on what we were talking about in the last segment. We talked about how, some days with your consistency in a practice, some days you're going to feel stronger and more flexible, and other days really feel like a struggle. But here's the main concept: not to judge yourself, because this typically is not going to create positive outcomes. And so I teach this quite often in yoga. Be aware, acknowledge mental, physical, emotional states, but then let that thought go. You've acknowledged it, and then just let it go if it doesn't serve you. If it's something that does serve you, then hold on to that and let that grow. But typically when we're judging ourselves, that's not necessarily doesn't turn into, a positive outcome in many ways, especially when you're trying to work on yourself mentally, physically, emotionally.
It's really important to try to push aside those things that no longer serve us and refocus ourselves and recommit ourselves to consistent, positive thought.
Yeah, and that's retraining, and we've talked about that in prior shows.
Absolutely.
About how we really can, research shows we can retrain our brain. We don't have to be stuck in patterns that are unhealthy and negative. I want to touch a little bit about the ideas of tapas, T-A-P-A-S, and it's not the type that you eat, because when I think tapas, being Italian, I always think food, and I'm like,
to that one.
Yeah. But in yoga, tapas is from fiery discipline. So the word tapas actually comes from the ancient language Sanskrit, and the word actually means tap. Okay, so when you look at tapas, you take the as away from the n, and it's just the tap part, and that means to burn. Traditionally, tapas is viewed as a commitment to burning away obstacles that are in the way of a yogic state. Now, just to describe what a yogic state means, in case you're wondering, well, what's a yogic state? This means a union of your body, mind, and spirit. So yoga means to yoke, or to connect, or to unite.
Join together.
Right.
Yes.
And so we're uniting body, mind, and spirit. And when that happens, then you're in a place where you can hold conversations with people and make important decisions and not be reacting, but instead be responding to the life around you. So this is where we want to be at the end of our yoga practice. And sometimes in your practice, you actually create these tapas, this fire or this heat that is burning. So physically it's happening in our practice, because I've been working a lot with tapas in the last 2 weeks in the classes that I'm teaching. And so physically you feel heat. You actually feel, when you're holding a pose or you're working a pose, you actually feel heat happening.
You feel it being generated almost
from the inside out.
From the core of your body. And
right.
It's a really interesting.
And then what does that do once you start to feel that, Shannon? When you feel that, where does it take you mentally or emotionally?
I feel like I'm opening up, actually, because it feels like it's radiating outward from my center. And so it actually takes me to a more open state.
See, now you're open to that and you have experience with that. For a new yogi, they're like, it's really hot in here, Wendy. Can you turn the AC on? Why is it so hot? Are you guys hot? And they step completely out of their practice. They're freaking out that it's so hot. They're like,
kind of freak out.
I wasn't running. I wasn't doing push-ups. I'm just standing here in this yoga pose, and it's really hot in here.
It's because you've activated that center.
And so, again, it comes back to burning away obstacles that are in the way. Okay, so that's physically what's happening. And so then we go into the mental side of it as well, and maybe even the spiritual side. But more generally, It's really the willingness to do what it takes to reach a goal. So in other words, tapas means discipline. It's committing to something and doing whatever it takes to reach a goal. And that truly is what it means, to reach a goal, to be successful.
And to remove the obstacles that are standing in your way.
Exactly. Not just in a yoga or Pilates practice, but in life in general. So this is where yoga becomes something that we do on the mat. We learn, it becomes an obstacle for us. It becomes something that we have to deal with right then and there. And then we can relate it to, something off of the yoga mat in our life that day. As it comes back to us in a different form, we can be like, oh, you know what? This happened on my yoga mat this morning. This is what I did with that. Let me try to apply this to what's happening in my life.
And if done consistently, one can't help but have your yoga factor into your daily life in a positive way.
Exactly, right. And remember, discipline does not equal difficulty. And that's a really important thought, because just because somebody is disciplined or they have discipline does not necessarily mean that it has to be difficult. You can be disciplined, and the more disciplined you are, the easier things become. And you start to see ease in your commitment and your consistency in life.
Well, and one can appear to be very disciplined, but perhaps it's just a rigidity of one's personality or thought processes. So in fact, their life may not be as easy as the person who has committed and worked through those processes.
True, absolutely. And you don't really need to achieve some crazy twisty posture to become more yogic. It's not about pushing yourself as hard as you can in a physical sense. It's taking a step forward, no matter how big or small, and knowing that is enough. It's a constant practice that improves the quality of your life. And it starts, for most of us, on our yoga mat. It's, enhancing the quality of our life on the yoga mat, and then visualizing, how can I enhance the quality of my life off of my yoga mat?
Yes.
And realizing that those obstacles are gonna be there, whether they're internal obstacles, things we think or feel, emotionally or physically, or external obstacles, right? And they tend to intertwine. So I want to give just a little exercise here for you to do. So here's a question for you. Is there some area of your life where you would like to make a change? So I'm going to ask it again so you can really think about that. Is there some area of your life where you would really like to make a change? And most of us will say yes, and most of us will take a little bit of time to truly think about, zeroing in on one area. There's a few areas that I would like to change in my life, but just pick one of those. And here's the exercise for you for this week. Commit this week to one small change and bring it on with focused discipline. Commit yourself to the fire of tapas, exactly what we've been talking about, and keep it burning and let it fuel a consistent practice of discipline. And it may just be transformational for you. You have no idea what that'll do for you, but you won't know unless you take that first step and actually do it. Commit to it.
I suspect it'll push you on to the next step.
And that's what happens. Just taking that first step shifts your perspective, like we spoke about earlier.
Right.
And now you're seeing it from a different way. So, just for example, if you see a flight of stairs, and this is, Martin Luther King had this quote that you don't have to see the whole staircase, you just have to take the first step. But it's true. If you step up just one step on a staircase and you turn around and you look, you're going to see things differently. So it's the same thing. It's a metaphor for the same thing in life. Just take that first step. I want to thank you for listening today to our show about consistency. Thanking again our guest, Crystal Lacy-Edwards, and talking about Pilates, and my co-host, Shannon Levy-heath, for sharing this time with me. It's such a fun time to share. And
Truly
I
is.
wanted to remind you once more that we are offering a free Pilates class this Sunday, and we'll also be doing a yoga class next Sunday and a yoga class the following Sunday. So every Sunday for the month of March, Vayu Yoga is offering a free class at Lululemon in our mall out here. So join us for that. If you need more information, and if you would like more information, I'd like you to need it, but if you would like more information about Vayu Yoga, we are located at Vayu Yoga, VAYUyoga.com. And we're also at the corner of 8th and Main Street in Old Town Newhall. I'm Wendy Hassenpflug, and you're listening to Vibrant Living with Vayu Yoga on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS.